What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Ben on Sports. And as usual for this time of year, it is our weekly NASCAR preview and predictions. This week for week 11, going into Texas, as the title says. Hope you're enjoying the series. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Storylines. Penske finally got one. I know they kind of got one with their association with Wood Brothers Racing, with Josh Berry winning in Vegas early in the year, but finally, the first Penske car got to victory lane. What a shocker. It was Talladega, and it was one of the best super speedway racers in the Cup Series in Austin Cindric. Which is kind of funny because while Cindric has been super fast at the super speedway tracks, he's probably on any given week, or at least on average, the slowest of the three Penske cars. It doesn't matter. He locks himself into the playoffs. And that's a good thing for him because he should be winning races and making the playoffs. That's what Penske expects. But without winning races, he has been making it, and he hasn't been great on points. He doesn't have consistent speed, but he's seems like he has a little bit more this year. Who will be the next Penske driver? Who knows? But Austin Cindric, after a kind of a rough start, some unlucky things happening early on, gets his first win at Talladega, gets Penske's first win of the season, and his third career victory overall. And Ford broke the winless streak. Other than that Wood Brothers win in Vegas for Barry to start at the beginning of the year, um, Ford hadn't won, and that was way back in early March, and it is now May. So I guess last week's race was April, but still, Ford had a pretty long winless streak. Toyota and Chevy were kind of dominating. You didn't see a whole lot of Fords up front, period. So Ford doing what they're good at, winning at super speedway tracks. And our Toyota's still struggling there. They won the pole to the Daytona 500 and had some speed, but they didn't. Not, I think only one of them qualified top 10. And other than the fact when everybody was riding around slow, which is a whole other problem, and they charged to the front going full speed, they really weren't at the front a whole lot. I thought their strategy was going to pay off late in the race. We have more to come on that. But our Toyota's missing something on super speedways. I feel like they could be. Chevy is obviously, there's more Fords, there's more Chevys to work together, and there's more. But I feel like the Toyotas aren't consistent and aren't as fast all the time as the other two manufacturers. Maybe in Toyota will get it figured out, and I think that they need to get it figured out before the end of the year because a lot of Toyota drivers, not all of them, but a lot of them aren't really in stage point contention, which can hurt you in the points. What is wrong with super speedway racing? I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I'm an expert. In fact, I think in some ways it was refreshing that we didn't have everybody wreck at the end like we do so frequently. But it is concerning to me that we aren't like the point is we're at the highest level of the Cup Series. We should be running full speed around the track for as much as we can. It shouldn't turn into a fuel savings race. At least that is my opinion. And the last couple super speedway races, it feels like it's more about fuel saving than it is about racing. You have everybody going around not even at full speed. We should be encouraging drivers to be going as fast as they can, especially at super speedways. That's the point, for as long as they can. Something has to change. I don't know if it's in the package. I don't know if it's mixing up the stage lengths. I don't know if it's getting rid of stages altogether. I don't know what it is, but in my opinion, something needs to change in the way that super speedway racing occurs, because we as a NASCAR community can't have all of these fuel saving races on super speedway. I really don't love super fuel savings race in the first place, but super speedways are the last place that it should be happening. We should be encouraging guys to go after each other the entirety of the race. And another part of super speedway racing I want to talk about is should Ross Chastain's move be wrong or illegal? I didn't hear them talk about it a lot on the broadcast. I think Denny Hamlin may have said something about it. I don't know. I don't want to make it seem like I get everything from him because live I had an issue with the move Ross Chastain did. And I'm sure a lot of people didn't. Are just going to say, "Oh, it's super speedway racing. That's what you got to do to win." But everybody swears they care about driver health and safety. What Ross Chastain did was inherently dangerous. And quite frankly, in a lot of other scenarios, a lot of people would have been mad. And I think Chastain started to get his reputation back after he kind of worked for like a year or so on getting rid of it. Wait, if you want to make an aggressive send, it's a little bit different. But making an aggressive block of a whole line of cars that's going 10 to 20 miles an hour faster than you is reckless. It's dangerous. And quite frankly, Ross Chastain deserved to get wrecked. And the only reason why he didn't is because all the Toyotas coming behind him didn't want to wreck themselves. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it was the last group of green flag pit stops. Toyotas were the first to come down. And then in the group, Ross Chastain goes out with mostly Chevys. Um, they were still kind of they had blended back onto the track, but they were still getting up to speed. And the process of them getting up to speed, the Toyotas had caught them and were about to pass them, I believe, in turns 2 and 3. It might have been 3 and 4. If they had already blended onto the track, it would have had to be 3 and 4, right? And Ross Chastain says, "Oh, I'm going way slower than these guys. So they're going to pass me. And I'm in the back of my line. So what I'm going to do is move all the way to the top of the racetrack. And I'm going to slow all these guys down, which, sometimes it makes sense. But when you have a line of 8 cars going 20 to 30 miles an hour faster, and the bottom lane is blocked because of all the other slow cars, for you to go up there and do that is incredibly reckless. And in other scenarios, NASCAR has protocols that say that that's illegal. I mean, in my opinion, it's an extension of the blend line where if you're not up to speed, you shouldn't be allowed to block anybody. If you're not up to speed, you shouldn't be able to pull into the racetrack. Now, I know you kind of have to, but to get up to speed, I just think that kind of move is dangerous. It's not competitive. And I understand that he does everything he thinks he has to do to win. I thought that, I'm not even really a big Toyota fan, but it did kind of kill Toyota's chances to win. It was Toyota's strategy. It had worked out. They were going to pass at least that first group. Maybe they even catch the Fords, or at least there's more of them up front where they can race. But it kind of killed all the Toyota's races. And I don't know. I wasn't a fan of the move. I think that there needs to be something in the rules for that kind of move. It's just dangerous. It's reckless. And in an era where we're supposed to care so much about driver safety, it goes against everything that stance supposedly stands for. Let me know in the comments if you thought anything of it. If you think I'm way overreacting, let me know in the comments what you think about super speedway racing overall. Let me know in the comments what you thought about Ross Chastain's move. And if you didn't see it, you probably shouldn't be commenting on it. I'm sure you can find it on social media somewhere, though. And then the last point, same thing as I said last week. NASCAR Full Speed Season 2 coming to Netflix on May 7th. One more race weekend and it'll be here. I personally love Season 1. I think it's a great look at these drivers, their inside lives, some of the things they're doing off the racetrack. It was an incredible series. At least season 1 was. Go watch season 2 when it comes out May 7th. I mean, after all, if we want NASCAR to grow, maybe having a Netflix series showing its biggest stars will help with that. History at Texas. That's where we are this week. That's where NASCAR is this week. There's only been 3 next-gen races at Texas, 1 per year. First 2 years was in the playoffs, and then now it has moved to the late spring. The winners, it was 3 Chevys: Tyler Reddick, William Byron, and Chase Elliott. I know what you're saying. Tyler Reddick is not Chevy. He's Toyota. This was his last year with RCR at Toyota when he won. So Toyota is the only manufacturer that has won at Texas in the next gen. Best average finish, William Byron, another track where William Byron runs really well, 3.7, averaging a top 4 finish. Brad Keselowski, 5.7. This may be surprising for some people, but Chase Briscoe with Stewart-Haas Racing. I know, the first races he ran here were with Stewart-Haas, average finishing position of 7. Daniel Suarez, another one. It's not a road course, it's not a super speedway, but Suarez has run it well, average of 8.3. And Tyler Reddick with an average finishing position of 10th. Some guys maybe that aren't typically at the top could be. Most top fives, Tyler Reddick and William Byron are there with 2. And then, in 3 races, it's hard to have too much separation with top fives. There's 11 guys with 1 top fives. Chastain, Blaney, Bell, Elliott, Hamlin, Haley, big surprise there. Bubba Wallace, Joey Logano, Chase Briscoe, Daniel Suarez, and Brad Keselowski. Yeah, I added my normal top fives, but that's literally every single driver that's ever had a top 5 at the track in the next gen era because there's only been 3 races. Most top 10s, this has a little bit more separation. 3-way tie at first between the 3 people with the best average finishing position. What a shocker. William Byron, Brad Keselowski, Chase Briscoe all have finished in the top 10 every single next gen race at Texas. And then there's 4 drivers tied at 2. Daniel Suarez, Denny Hamlin, Bubba Wallace, and Tyler Reddick. Favorites to win. Now, my driver rankings, I felt really weird because I didn't have Kyle Larson. Kyle Larson is a top 5 threat to win every track, every week. And I think I just need to have my own Kyle Larson category, maybe even William Byron, because he's a threat at almost every track too. So I just want to get that away. Kyle Larson is probably a top 3 favorite to win this race. In fact, I might put Kyle Larson ahead of Chase Elliott, who has won at this track already. Even though he's never won, he's had some bad luck, right? Some not so great finishes. Just the fact that he hasn't raced well here makes me think he's going to come out motivated. Kyle Larson honestly might be my favorite this week with some stuff, but I feel like I'm always picking Kyle Larson, so I wanted to change it up and maybe pick some other smaller names. All right, that's why Kyle Larson is not on the list. Do not come after me for not having him on the list. I feel like I just gave a fair explanation as to why. Team rankings, Hendrick. What a shocker. Hendrick and Joe Gibbs are 1 and 2, and my favorite teams to win this week. Don't think that should be shocking anybody. Team Penske at 3. Logano has some good runs here. Blaney, kind of good, kind of bad. But Team Penske coming off of a win. Maybe they have some momentum. 23XI. Bubba runs good here. Tyler Reddick runs good here. Toyota seems like they're good here. They just can't get the race winning speed. So look out for 23XI. And RFK, Brad Keselowski, in next gen, second best average finishing position. I believe Chris Buescher has been okay here. It is his home track, which is funny that he, actually, a lot of the race for RFK will probably be on Brad Keselowski. Chris Buescher has raced well on tracks similar to Texas, but he's never done great at Texas. But maybe Chris Buescher figures it out this week. I still like RFK as my 5th team, as the 5th team on the list here, with Trackhouse not too far behind. Driver rankings. On terms, I explained why Kyle Larson isn't there. Feel like I need to get that out of the way. But William Byron and Chase Elliott 1-2, both pass winners here. Tyler Reddick, another pass winner who also has another top 10 with Toyota to prove that he is still successful with Toyota. Brad Keselowski, second best driver in next gen here, you could argue. Doesn't have a win, desperately needs a win, especially because especially with the rough season he's been having. Denny Hamlin has had a good run or two here. He's always a threat on these intermediate tracks. And he's also just a good NASCAR driver. Chase Briscoe has been one of the best next-gen drivers on this track. He's with Toyota, who brings a little bit more more particularly, he's with Joe Gibbs. They will be bringing more speed consistently than what he's used to. He's dipped down a little bit last week at Talladega, but he's still pretty hot right now. Look out for Chase Briscoe. Bubba Wallace has had some really good runs here, and he's off to a great start. One of the hottest drivers in NASCAR. He's still top 8 in points. I believe he's 8th or not. He's 8th or 9th in points. Had a great point week last week. Look out for Bubba Wallace to have another good week. Joe Logano has had some good finishes at Texas. He's, Ford in general has been very hit or miss, I think, on intermediates in the next gen, especially these 1.5 mile intermediates like Texas and Charlotte and Kansas, etc. But Joey Logano kind of like Ford is hit or miss, but when he hits, he really hits. And they're going to be desperate after that penalty. They finally had their best run of the season, got hit with a DQ. I'll be interested to see if there's a penalty coming down. I think the DQ will just be it, and that'll be enough. But they, just like Ford, kind of hit or miss. I think they know they need to hit this week. I think they figured out Joey Logano could be a contender. Daniel Suarez historically has been good here, especially in the next gen. And he's struggling a little bit to start the year. He can still point his way into the playoffs if he gets going. Look out for Daniel Suarez. And I think the reason why I have Joey Logano on here twice is because I was thinking about his teammate Ryan Blaney, who hasn't always had the most success here, but he has had some intermediate track success. And I think Penske is starting to get more and more consistent with the speed they bring. I was thinking Blaney for 10, which is probably why I put Logano. I was like, oh, it's one of the Penske Fords. But I also was thinking about Christopher Bell, and I guess I got my wires crossed. But yes, Christopher Bell and Ryan Blaney are kind of that 10th and 11th, not Joey Logano again. Driver power rankings. Obviously, Kyle Larson first. One stage one last week has won the most stages all time since that became a thing back in 2014. Trying to make a run for the regular season points again. He's not first. In fact, he's second. But the person who is first, William Byron. Kyle Larson has been hotter as of late, which is why I have him ahead of Byron. But Byron still having a good season. Had a better week last week. And Byron is better than Larson is on this track. Byron's been the best driver at Texas. Byron could very easily be number one in the power rankings next week. Denny Hamlin, he's been on a tear the last 4 to 6 weeks of the season after we got out of those super speedways, the road course, that crazy start. He's been one of the two best drivers in the series. I don't expect anything to change this week. Chase Elliott was okay last week. He's been so consistent this year. I would argue he's been the most consistent out of all the Hendrick cars, but he's also the only one that hasn't really had race winning speed yet. He's won at Texas in the next gen. That changes this week. I think Elliott could be looking at a really good points day. Christopher Bell starting to drop a little bit after winning those 3 straight races, and then he had a good run at Bristol. Not great last week, but very few Toyotas did have a good week last week. He's still top 5 in points. He's doing just fine. Still has won the most races in the series this year. Kind of hard to drop somebody like that out of the top 5. Tyler Reddick still having an okay start to the year. I think what's the stat? He's having the best average finish of his career, but he's on track to have less top 10s than he did last season. Tyler Reddick is fine. He's going to find his way to victory lane once, probably multiple times. Maybe it starts this week at Texas. Ryan Blaney, he's still bad luck Blaney. I still think he should be a top 5 contender for the title. He keeps on running the bad luck, having motors blow, getting in other people's wrecks, stuff like that. His teammates just finished first and second before second place got DQ'd, or was pre-second, and then Logano was in the top 5, something like that. But still, he's been the most consistently been. He's been the most consistent Penske driver with speed. You can't count him out of any race in my mind, even if he historically hasn't been great at Texas. Look for Ryan Blaney to try and start the rebound this week. He could certainly use it. Bubba, I talked about already his great start to the season, and I can't drop him outside of the top 10, especially because he had a great points week last week. Was somehow able to get a really good finish despite being like outside the top 20 with just a few laps left. I believe he finished 10th, got some stage points. Bubba's looking really, really good early in the year. Maybe this is will officially turn into his breakout season. Ross Chastain led a lap last week for the first time in a while. Was at the front for a little bit. Didn't finish as good as Ross Chastain maybe feels like he should at super speedways, but he's still figuring out a way to go fast. And Trackhouse clearly has found speed at Texas before with Daniel Suarez. Maybe it's Ross Chastain's turn. Alex Bowman had a top 10 last week at Talladega. Needed it after struggling for a couple weeks. Gets back on the right track. He's still a guy that's in the top 8, 10 in points. Top 8 even, I think, maybe. and he's shown a lot of speed this year. Just hasn't quite been able to find victory lane. Uh, Maybe Hendrick Motorsports brings 4 super fast hot rods. That's certainly not out of the equation. Chase Briscoe was heading straight for 12 on these power rankings until that Joey Logano penalty. An okay week for Briscoe, avoided disaster and finishing at the back. Still picked up some okay finishing points. Didn't get any stage points. Just an okay week. Kind of what like a lot of Toyota had, I would say. Still kind of not too comfortably, but still kind of comfortably in the playoffs. A good week this week could go a long way to continue to create separation. He's 12th in the standings. However, is it important to note he's 12th in the regular season standings, but he's really 14th in the when looking at who's making the playoffs out of 16 teams, because Cindric and Barry are behind him in the regular season points, but both have wins, which put them above him. Joey Logano, a guy that's kind of like Chase Briscoe, been flirting with the top 10 in points, hasn't quite gotten there consistently. Needs a good run this week, especially because he got DQ'd last week after what he thought was a very good day, which is why he is 12th, not 11th. Austin Cindric, last week's winner, moving from unranked to number 13. I'm interested to see, can Austin Cindric carry his speed to these intermediates, to the non-speedways, and to the non-road courses. He's always been fast on road courses and super speedways. He does have a race win at a more regular oval at WWT. Can he consistently find speed at other types of tracks? If he can find that consistency, he can be a contender. Chris Buescher, not a great week last week. Not awful, but I feel like that's the story of Chris Buescher right now. At least this season, he's kind of just steadily going along, not winning races, maybe not race winning speed, but he's also not finishing 30th every week either. He's in on points right now, just has to keep finding ways to putting together solid finishes until he, has more speed in the car. Because I think RFK would tell you Ryan Preece has had some good runs, but outside of that, I think RFK would tell you they would want to be faster as an organization. AJ Allmendinger picking up some stage points and a decent finish last week. The Dinger is 15th in points, which means he's one spot out of the playoffs when accounting for the 2 race winners. Allmendinger, he's had some good finishes at Texas, even if he was a long time ago and not with Colleague. But Allmendinger's having a good season so far. I don't think enough people are talking about it. He might be my biggest surprise of the year just because of how many races he's been able to be in that top 10, top 15, getting some back end stage points. I don't know if he'll ever have race winning speed on anything other than a road course, but he's still finding ways to get good finishes, get a couple of stage points, and just, stay out of trouble. AJ Allmendinger staying in the top 15. Kyle Busch, I thought, maybe this was going to be the week he found victory lane or had a really good week. Didn't have an awful week, didn't have a great week, recovered well from spinning, and he's still flirting around the playoff cut line. And right now, the playoff cut line's still kind of big. I'm sure it'll continue to separate and get bigger through the summer months. But right now, Kyle Busch is there, and maybe he can make a run here and be one of the guys that put some distance between himself and the cut line or even win a race. Ricky Stenhouse, another guy with an okay week that I think is a little bit closer on points than people maybe realize. How long can Ricky Stenhouse stick around? Carson Hocevar had a great week. I think he is going to continue to turn into a phenomenal super speedway driver. Had a good week at Bristol going, and even after that mistake at Bristol, was able to somewhat recover. 2 back-to-back good weeks for Hocevar. Is Hocevar heating up? Maybe. I'm very intrigued to see what Hocevar can do and if he can continue the momentum, because he's another guy. I keep talking about points. Maybe Hocevar finds a way to a win. I don't know. But he can find his way to some points. Ryan Preece, after that DQ, I really, really dropped him. 3 bad weeks in a row. He's had speed in some of those weeks, especially this week. He just has to find a way to capitalize off of speed. Obviously, the DQ isn't necessarily his fault, but I think that team has speed. They just have to get the finishes they deserve from it. And again, this like 14 to 20 range, are kind of close on points. It just takes a hot couple weeks for somebody, and they could go from out to in, or a bad couple weeks can go from in to out. that type of thing. So any of these guys, as of right now, of course, are still okay on points. There's still a lot left that could happen between now and playoff cut line day to keep an eye on. And then Josh Berry is about to drop out for me. I have him at 20th because he is a race winner. He's right now ranked lower than any of the other race winners. But I'm starting to get concerned. Even at some of the tracks where he's flashed some speed, he's not getting good finishes. He really hasn't done a whole lot since winning that race. And I don't know if Texas is the track where he's going to figure out. Maybe it is. I mean, Vegas and Texas aren't too dissimilar, right? They're both those mile-and-a-half intermediates. So maybe Josh Berry does find some speed and get there this week. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Please like, comment, and subscribe. I want to hear your favorite NASCAR drivers, how you think people are doing. Is there any other sleeper contenders I'm not thinking about? Let me know what I was talking about earlier with Ross Chastain. If you think it's becoming a problem, if you think what he did at Talladega wasn't right, or if it was right, let me know all that stuff in the comments. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Follow me on X. My tag is right there. Thank you for taking time out of your days, your weeks, and your lives for listening. As always, make sure you watch sports this weekend. A lot of great stuff in the NHL and NBA, and of course, NASCAR. Take care of yourselves. Take care of your families. Peace out.